As I mentioned, Tom is an assistant managing editor at Crain's, and that means he directs our expanded healthcare coverage in print and online. Before this, Tom led the real estate reporting team, and he has covered commercial real estate for more than a decade, both at Crain's and the Chicago Tribune. Before becoming a journalist, Tom spent 7 years as a practicing attorney. So, Tom, I hand things over to you to introduce this morning's panelists and begin the dialogue.
We have Tom Fahey. He is the vice chair of Little Company of Mary Hospital in Evergreen Park, which had total revenue of $194 million in 2012. He is also the managing partner of Ungaretti and Harris. Mary Kay Ladone is vice chair of Edward Hospital and Health Services. She is the corporate vice president of investor relations at Baxter International. Tim Sullivan is a member of the board of trustees of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. He is a managing director of Madison Dearborn Partners, where he specializes in healthcare investments. Northwestern Memorial Hospital had annual revenue of $1.3 billion in 2011, more than any other hospital in the Chicago area. And seated next to me is Karen Wells. She is a member of the Board of Governors of Alexian Brothers Health System in Arlington Heights, the northwest suburbs. She is a former vice president of U.S. strategy for McDonald's Corp., and she now has her own consulting firm, AIW Group. Panelists, let's jump right in with what seems to be the issue of the day today, and remains so, and that is cost cutting. It is likely that sequestration will at least start to go into effect. That will cause an immediate cut to Medicare, which is a key source of revenue. We asked our guests to submit questions when they registered, and Mark Long of TCF Bank noted that at a recent Crain's forum with CEOs, several of them said that they hoped to cut costs by 20% in 2013. What is the role of hospital boards in terms of cutting costs with this challenging environment? Who wants to jump in? Yes, Mary Kay.
I can start. You know, at Edward, we take this very seriously, and we have a number of what we call operational improvement teams throughout the hospital that are focused on various aspects of looking at ways that we can become more efficient, that we can improve the quality, but also reduce the cost of delivering care. So every year we have a process by which we create these teams, and they work together, and they provide updates to the board on a pretty regular basis. And every year we set a goal in terms of how much we'd like to take out. And we really monitor what progress we're making towards achieving those goals. So we do take this very seriously.
Tom, were you going to jump in?
Well, I would not minimize the role of the board at Little Company in that regard, but I would say we are fortunate to have management that really takes the lead on that issue. We certainly pay attention to the reports we get at the board. I don't feel that, you know, of all the things to be worried about in terms of healthcare these days, that the board needs to focus continually on cost cutting, because we do have a great confidence in our finance staff and management across the board. They really show great leadership in keeping costs under control.
The Tim, Greg Shannon of HBI Solutions, when he registered, noted that IT appears to show great promise in contributing to reducing costs. How important is IT to hospitals, number one, in terms of priorities set by the board, Northwestern long a leader in this, but also are we seeing the promise realized in terms of cost reductions thanks to IT?
Well, Tom, as you mentioned, Northwestern was one of the leaders on that. They went to a full electronic medical record a long time ago and have it fully implemented in place. Obviously, the challenge going forward is to get it out into the community with the physician network and getting the systems to interface with each other in the right way. I think it does clearly, having that data accessible for the physicians is key element of what we talk about on the Standards Committee, delivering higher outcome. And the only way you can do that is obviously measuring the kind of quality and care that you're providing, and then making a continuous improvement in what you're doing. That gets back to your first question on being able to deliver care, the right quality care, the ever increasing standard of care on a lower cost basis. And the EMR is, without a doubt, the way that it will go going forward. More work to be done. As you know, the government's been incenting for all hospitals to adopt the electronic medical record. Northwestern has been involved in that. Connecting with the physicians that they have in the network is the thing that's going on right now, and they'll continue to focus on that going forward.
Just a comment, Tom.
Yeah.
At Alexian Brothers, the same holds true, especially with our recent partnership with Ascension Health. It really has accelerated our ability to advance what we're doing from a technology standpoint. And as we all know, there's an abundance of paperwork in our industry, and a need to do that very quickly. I wanted to make a side point on the comment on cost and efficiency for the Alexian Brothers Health system. It is something that we've been focusing on, or the management team has been focusing on, actually ahead of reform, to put us in a better position. But the one thing that we know is a tricky balance, while cost management is important, is making sure that we don't jeopardize, obviously, the quality of care that's there, that we need to provide. So the emphasis between the balance of cost cutting and, in better words, making sure that we're fully aware of how much it costs to run our business in an industry, as you know, that has not had as much regulation as we're about to see that's coming up. It has been a big focus for us, because we know if we can identify what our costs are, we can better manage it in the future and prepare for what reform will be.
The Tim mentioned quality, which is increasingly important, and a part of, in terms of hospital revenues, has added, performance has added a new dimension. We have Medicare, separate from the sequestration cuts, imposing penalties for high readmission rates. Medicare has also started a value-based purchasing, which will either penalize or reward hospitals for quality of care. Tim, what is the board's role in terms of establishing quality standards at a hospital?
Well, I chair the Standards Committee at NMH, and that committee meets every other month. I'm in a conversation with the management team on a monthly basis in terms of the quality that's being delivered, monitoring adverse events to the extent that they happen, doing the root cause analysis. There's a whole host of dashboard items that we monitor on a regular basis, and we're always raising the bar within the organization. There's full transparency on it. If you go on the website of NMH, there's 300 quality measures that are listed. The hospital does that to, one, be transparent to the marketplace and to the consumer as to what they're doing, but also it becomes a standard by which they're always going to be raising some of the metrics that aren't as good today as we want them to be going forward. We're letting the community know about it, but we're also working within the hospital walls to improve on those particular quality measures, because that is what the government is going to drive to on a go-forward basis. You have to find a way to deliver patient-first quality care and do it in an environment where the dollars that are going to be coming are going to be more dear going forward.
And is your role there to kind of help set the goals with management, and then kind of hold them accountable to reaching that? Is that how?
It really, I would say, as always on these things, it emanates first from the team, the clinicians. Mm-hmm. They come up with it, and obviously there's governing bodies out there. There's the government that has set its view of certain quality metrics, near miss and never events that are established. So that becomes part of it, but we're also internally looking at what we're doing. And certain items, if we have central line infections, if that's an issue that we have within our hospital, we're going to focus on that. So it's like any organization. What are you doing well? Let's keep the focus on that, hand hygiene, things of that nature, but then rotate to those things that we're not quite doing as well on. Put that on our dashboard. Let's measure it and look at it every other month in our committees. Let's talk about it. I do every month with the clinicians, and let's get better at it. And what's occurring is it's being raised to us as a standards committee. We're all looking at it, and as lay people who know something about healthcare, we then are asking the layperson question on what are we doing here, how are we training our clinicians, things of that nature. One thing that there's a lot that's being done at NMH that I've certainly have been a big endorser of because of my previous profession as in the naval aviation community is simulator use. And the fact that they're taking the clinicians through simulators on things that are issues and or could be issues and training them. That's all stuff that's being generated by the team. And then we as committee members are asking about it and taking tours of some of the simulators. We've been through 2 already as a committee, going and seeing what the clinician training program's about. So it comes from them. We're monitoring it on our dashboard, and then we're going out into the field to look at what's being done. So there's total involvement on both sides.
Tom, has the board attention to quality concerns changed over the years? Not to harp on the fact that you're much older than you look, but you...
Is there a common theme here today?
It seems to be. But you are, I believe, our longest-serving trustee on the panel. You've been with Little Company of Mary for 10 years. Has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been part of the reporting mechanism at the board, always part of the minutes, if you will. It has certainly changed the extent of focus it now gets. It has changed to the extent that the stakes are so much higher now. The board is well aware of that quality just doesn't mean we're running a good hospital. It means we're going to get reimbursed for what we do. And it has changed in terms of the data that's available, that is insisted upon, and as Tim indicated, the transparency of that data. So yeah, we're well aware of what the standards now, I think we've all become a lot more articulate as to what they mean, and we certainly need to be aware of the ramifications if we're not meeting any particular quality standards.
Mary Kay, how often at Edward does the board review quality issues?
We review quality at every board meeting. So we have a committee that meets many times throughout the year. Probably the most, in terms of all of our committees, that committee probably meets more times than any other. And then that committee chair does report back to the board at every board meeting, and we do spend time going through the details. And occasionally we actually spend even more time with an in-depth review in terms of quality.
Is that true of everybody, quality at every board meeting?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And this is an example of our panelists kind of being examples of setting the standard for corporate governance in hospitals. Only in a 2009 survey published in Health Affairs of board chairs, 1,000 board chairs, they said that quality was reviewed at only 63% said that quality issues were reviewed at every board meeting, compared to financial issues, which came up more than 90% at every board meeting. The committees on patient care or quality still not as uniform. 64% say they had such qualities.
Can I add a comment there, Tom?
Feel free.
Thank you.
You don't have to ask my permission.
Thank you. I was being kind.
I know.
At Alexian, the one thing that is admirable from the management team, we absolutely have a committee on the board, and we review it. And I tell you the depths that we go into, to the point of trying to understand why human error takes place, is as far as we're taking it so that we can understand the root cause. But one of the things in both our medical facilities and our senior care facilities, which we have several around the country, each of the facilities have a quality council, not an executive board, but a quality council that is chaired by the CEO of the hospital. So there's no reporting to the CEO from a separate committee on what's happening in quality care. That CEO actually is an active member of the Quality Care Council that is in each of the units. And those units work together to provide the overview for the board. So it really is a bottom-up approach that ensures that quality care is happening.
The Adam Boris of ICNet Systems asked how hospitals respond to the increasing visibility of quality rankings. Does Alexian pay attention to those? There's a ranking. There are numerous rankings of uncertain, I guess, validity or varying validity. Does that get the board's attention?
Absolutely, and at every review, we talk about, and it is explained to us, obviously, where we rank, because there's so many different ways and so many different panels that rank hospitals on different elements and areas that we pay close attention to it. More recently, we did receive both the Alexian Brothers Medical Center and St. Alexis Medical Center were recipients of the 2013 Distinguished Hospital Award, and it really does focus on how we care for patients, so it is very important to us.
Mary Kay, do you agree? And is there any sense that this helps with patients, drawing patients?
Absolutely. I think it's critical that we understand how we are performing relative to others in our environment, and it's about continuous improvement. So to Karen's point, there is going to be human error. There is going to be different events that we need to analyze and understand, and we need to get better.
What's the most important job of a hospital board? Anyone?
I think it's being,
and that's a pause because you know we've got maybe 4 or 5 answers, so you have to pick one. You don't have to, and you can change your mind.
okay, I just did.
In the ranking, you can change your mind.
You know, I think the most job is well, it's to stay on top of the game, if you will, and to stay on top of management, and to be engaged. I think if this job was ever easy, 10 years ago, I can't remember back that far, continuing with the theme, but it is certainly not easy anymore. The stakes are very high, the field is changing very quickly, and it's just critical that our most important job is to keep up with the times, educate ourselves, and to make sure we're asking all the right questions of management.
I think with the election.
What's the second most important?
Well, for the Alexian Brothers, especially with the 800-year legacy that the Alexian Brothers have in the community, it's twofold. I'm cheating on your answer.
Yeah.
And so,
A and B.
Okay, it is. It's twofold. One is, how do we make sure that we have long, sustainable growth and stay a viable organization in the long term in a market that has so much volatility? And so the B, which is as important as A, is how do we stay true to our mission and values as the Alexian Brothers organization? And so we try to merge that as a board on how we stay viable and stay true to our mission.
Tim, you're on the board of several for-profit companies, one public company, Sorona Dental. Just in general, what's the board's most important job?
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities in my experience and my public experience and as a trustee of NMH in the context that full transparency, an honest conversation on the issues between the trustees and the management team, you know, information that's distributed ahead of time that you can obviously read and understand and then come to the board fully informed, ready to engage in that conversation. And obviously, from the vantage that I sit as the chair of the Standards Committee, a lot of my focus is on the quality, which of course that's what we're delivering is patient-first quality out in the community. And so I'm bringing that mindset in, and a lot of the questions that I'm asking the management team are centered around that, which is core to the mission of what NMH is doing, continuing to deliver patient-first quality care and raising that bar, which is coming. At the end of the day, we talked earlier about the different surveys. Something I've talked with the team about is there's a lot of different ways that care is being measured. It is becoming more of a consumer-driven healthcare system. That will be the way it occurs going forward. So the challenge is, unlike companies that have the FASB or GAP standards that are out there, there's a lot of different metrics that hospitals are now being judged on, and they have to understand all that, be responsive to it, be transparent to the community, but stay very focused on the core element, delivering quality care and doing it in a way that keeps you viable. That's the core element, and that's what I bring as a trustee to NMH.
How important, Mary Kay, go ahead.
Tom, I was just going to add, I mean, I think as we look at the board and our responsibilities, we do have a fiduciary responsibility to the communities that we serve in terms of really understanding their healthcare needs today, and as we look towards the future in this very changing and evolving and dynamic environment, that we're continuing to ensure that the hospital and the system are meeting those needs. So that's what I would say is really.
Do you
our
feel that
role.
that responsibility is different from kind of that's a different constituency than, let's say, hospital management? You know what I mean?
No, I'm not
I mean,
sure
you
I
kind of
understand
well,
your
you kind of
question.
join the hospital, and boards typically very close to their managers, their top executives. But in some sense, you have a separate responsibility, really, to the communities that you serve.
Correct.
Right? I mean, for example, just now Edward has signed a letter of intent to merge with Elmhurst. Is that sense on is your when you come to making that decision, is the most important thing that you think of? You know, how is this going to serve? How is this going to affect the communities we serve now, and how can we serve that new community?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a set of criteria that we use to evaluate strategic partnerships, and as we look at combining and merging with Elmhurst, we're very excited about that opportunity because we really do feel that that will elevate the health status of the within the community, help us to provide cost-effective and quality care and access to care for peoples in both of those communities.
Edward and Elmhurst signed a letter of intent in January. Elmhurst has a revenue of about $400 million. Edward, more than $500 million. The combined entity will now reach over $1 billion. How much does that decision on a merger come out of opportunity versus strategy?
I would view it more as a strategic move. I think, again, we're really focused on improving the quality, the access, and the cost-effective care in these communities. So with that objective in mind, you know, there's a variety of different things we can evaluate. And as we look at improving our competitiveness in the changing environment, we, the board, as well as the management team, felt that the merger with Elmhurst made tremendous sense. And would, again, really elevate the status of both organizations within the community.
Before this deal was presented, had Edward considered that expansion in terms of acquiring another hospital was a strategic goal for the hospital? And then the...
You know, we're fortunate that Edward is such a strong hospital, both from a quality and from a financial position. So we didn't feel the need to rush out and do something. We took this very seriously, and we're evaluating what made the most sense. And if something didn't make sense, we wouldn't have moved forward. But in this case, we felt like this was a strategic opportunity that would really be in the best interest of both Elmhurst and Edward.
Karen mentioned the transaction with Ascension Health. Ascension, as the audience knows, the largest Catholic healthcare network in the country, I think, third largest of any kind in the country, with revenues of more than $16 billion. The deal with Ascension was announced in April of 2011, closed in January of last year. Karen, did that come out of a kind of a strategic planning process where Alexian, as an independent, felt that they needed greater weight behind it?
It was a strategic decision, and it was actually at our executive board level that managed most of the strategy for Alexian Brothers. And it really came to a couple of things, and I said it earlier. What can we do to ensure the long-term sustainability of the brothers' 800-year legacy and make sure that we are here in the long term? And it was a 3-year process. With our strong financials, there were many folks that were considered and that considered us. But Ascension was clearly the winner because it was the best fit with our mission and our values and another Catholic organization.
And how soon, when should the board know about the prospects for a merger? How early in the process?
I think going to the earlier point about transparency as soon as possible, and we were engaged from the very beginning. You can't keep that type of information a secret from your board because they need to, support you on that. So we were engaged in the process from the very beginning. Obviously, it started with a smaller group at the executive level, and then as the process continued, as we looked at different options, the board was clearly engaged.
Tom, what is a small hospital to do? And Little Company of Mary, hardly small, but in the scheme of things now small, annual revenue of about $200 million. How do you evaluate merger possibilities?
I figured you might be sending that question this way since it's the game, which one of these is not like the others. I mean, Little Company, has been a independent hospital since the sisters founded it back in the years of the Depression, and so we remain today. That said, we certainly are a thoughtful board, a thoughtful management, and the sisters that sponsor Little Company are very thoughtful, and in their other ministries in the United States have dealt with mergers and changing healthcare environment. So we are, I think, at this point in time, very actively engaged, not only talking about affiliations, but rather what are we going to do to thrive as a community hospital, because that has been our niche. It's a very important niche for our community, and it has created just some very meaningful dialogue at the committee level and the hospital board level at Little Company, such as we haven't seen before, and it's a very healthy exercise. We are not unmindful of the fact that we are increasingly unique in our standaloneness, and at the same time we're blessed with a balance sheet that gives us the opportunity to be very thoughtful about what's going on in healthcare, where the payers are going, where the government is going, what the physicians want to see, and it's been a very active and current dialogue.
Is financial strength just a key to survival now? Have we learned in recent years that having the ability to kind of weather the ups and downs? I mean, Little Company of Mary is hardly little when it comes to cash and investments. I think they have $477 million. I mean, with the mergers that we have seen, is that consolidation driven by the fact that only the strong will really survive?
I mean, there's no question you need to have a balance sheet, or else you're really not able to consider many options at all. With a strong balance sheet, it gives you an opportunity to really consider what you want to do, where you want to deploy those resources. In our case, we were able to build a beautiful new addition and ambulatory facilities. Yeah, so if you don't have a balance sheet, and I think you'll see mergers, affiliations occurring all the time, whether it's in law firms, banks, healthcare facilities, if you do not have a very substantial financial wherewithal, you're going to be a lot more prone to having discussions.
How, Mary Kay, does Edward, you talked about the strategy that came out of, that started the kind of merger process. How does the Edward board handle strategy matters? Is there a separate committee on strategy, or is that a function of the executive committee? And how much time do you spend on that?
It is a function of the executive committee, but I would also say, I mean, we really engage the full entire board in the strategic planning process. I think we have a very long-standing and robust process at Edward, one that we continue to evaluate on an ongoing basis. It is part of discussions that we have, I would say almost at every board meeting in terms of strategy. When we execute, or the management team develops the strategic plan, they do take into account feedback from various stakeholders. So not only is the board involved in those discussions in helping develop the strategy, the management team, but also the physicians with which we work with. So it is a very, I would say, fluid process. And I think it has to be, given the changing and the evolving environment in which we're working in. We have to be able to be nimble and flexible and be able to change the plan as we see fit. So that's...
Tim, is strategy in particular an area where a board of, quote unquote, lay people can particularly be helpful by giving kind of a fresh take to what the future for the hospital should be?
I think absolutely, and in fact, the way the board, I think, has been developed at NMH, you're bringing an array of experiences to that board, people that have been involved in these strategic questions about acquisitions, as an example, and delivering better care and better product, if you will, in that way. So the engagement with the board, that's one of the responsibilities we have, to challenge the management team, make sure they're thinking about the right things clearly, and very typically a lot of the issues that arise are surfaced by the management team, and then we respond to that with other experiences that we have that we think can be helpful as they go through the thought process.
We got a couple finance questions from our guests. One, kind of very broadly on, but related to sequestration and a possible budget deal. Simon Tu of the investment bank Crain Brothers wants to know what your opinions are on the prospect of eliminating the tax-exempt status of municipal bonds. Clearly, hospital systems today, it's a very capital-intensive business. What would if the tax-exempt status of bonds for hospitals, for example, was reduced, what would the impact on the industry be?
I can tell you the impact on me personally, since I'm a healthcare finance lawyer.
Let's start there.
You know, I know that whenever they talk about a reform of the tax code, taxes and bonds sort of move onto the chopping block. I don't know that any of those initiatives have ever gotten real close to coming into reality, and we certainly hope, not only for personal reasons, but for the hospitals that we serve. It's an extraordinarily important piece of the puzzle, if you will, and a critical one to survival. If you're borrowing at 3.5% versus going out into the other markets, you don't have equity to rely on like for-profit competitors do. You really do need to be able to access capital at tax-exempt rates, and I think that would be just a dramatic result if they were to go away.
Were you, you're going to?
No, I agree with what Tom mentioned. I think that would be a significant change in the industry.
Gordon Sutherland of Lend-Lease Healthcare Development, not coincidentally, wants to know if the hospital industry is going to increasingly shift to outsourcing real estate, non-core real estate, particularly as we're seeing the greater importance of outpatient services as opposed to services in the hospital. Tim, do you think that that's just generally for the healthcare hospital industry, that there's going to be more continued trend in that direction?
Well, I think that hospitals in general are bringing more of their service offerings into the community. And some of that may end up being lease arrangements in shopping mall areas and or other medical center areas in the community that are smaller in size, and you're in a lease arrangement. So the intensity of the capital investment will be what's within the walls, not necessarily the real estate itself. I think that's a natural evolution of what's going on. We are seeing more outpatient capability. Technology enables a lot of that to happen. So I think that migration will happen. I don't know if it's going to be anything of a significant nature. Obviously, you've got fairly significant investments that have been made in hospitals themselves. So on a relative basis, I think you're still going to have a preponderance in the hospital wall. But I think the future investments are really going to be more about bringing it into the community, bringing the service to the patient in a way that makes it convenient for them to access the care and get access to the clinicians, high-quality clinicians.
It comes down to the cost of capital, really, and flexibility. Yes,
well, that, and where do you want to spend the dollars? Would you rather put it into the equipment that's going to be filling that outpatient center? Or do you want to buy the real estate and then fill it up? And I think everybody will make those decisions depending on what they particularly have in way of their funding capabilities. But I do think when you get into smaller outpatient settings, there are other financing alternatives, such as leasing land and such, that may make it more easy to do that on a faster basis.
Let me shift gears for a minute and talk about diversity. Nationwide, about 6% of hospital boards are African Americans, 3% are Hispanics. The corporate suite similar percentages as according to a study last year by the Institute for Diversity in Health Management of the American Hospital Association. Only 26% of hospital board members are women, according to a 2011 study by the Governance Institute. In this respect, certainly in terms of minority in this respect, hospital boards do not compare favorably with Fortune 500 companies.
If I could, because it's applicable to me in many ways. The reality is many of the numbers you just shared, Tom, are representative of corporate boards. The hospital boards are no different. They may be at a lower index, but the truth is that there is an opportunity for diversity on publicly held boards in general. At Alexion, one of the things that the management team under the leadership of Mark Fry, who's an outstanding CEO, has put in place, they just hired a new chief human resource officer with an intentional focus on diversity. Just an aside, if I could, if diversity, as many of you know, does not happen by chance, it is extremely purposeful. It requires support from leadership to get it done in the organization, and obviously lots of training. So I'm very pleased with where Alexion is headed. I'm obviously honored to be on the board, but I think we still have a lot of work to do.
I should just, before we, I know we want to keep on this subject, but I want to say that Crain Chicago Business, has not always been as good in diversity in some of our events as I would like us to be. Sometimes we have disappointed ourselves. In terms of, how does Alexion handle board development? Because I mean, it's, you know, I mean, this is the key to creating diversity in part, is to have a formal process in terms of recruiting?
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you, quite frankly, we're at the beginning of that process. With some of the changes that Mark has made with the leadership team, we had a great staff before, but it built on that foundation. We really are in our beginning stages, and with the appointment of the new human resource officer, I think we're going to be in a great place. We do, like most boards, have retreats where we do not only mission-based training, but some diversity training, but we literally are at the tip of the iceberg on that.
Mary Kay?
Yeah, I would add, I think we're fortunate at Edward. We do have a number of diverse candidates on our board. We have 3 women, which I think is unique, and one of Hispanic. But I'd like to mention, too, that I think diversity is more than just, you know, gender or race or age. It's also about diversity of thought, diversity of expertise. We're fortunate to have a very strong board with a lot of members that represent various industries, have various skill sets and talents that they bring to the board. So I think you have to look at it, you know, very comprehensively. And again, I would agree with Karen. I think we're early in the stages of putting in place robust processes around board recruitment and governance practices.
Tom, is it a question of just putting the effort into it?
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be thoughtful. Our management's very good about always surveying board members for new people to come on to committees. I'm starting to think you can't get off until you find somebody to take your place, perhaps. Or till Sister Kathleen lets you get off. But yeah, so we're always looking to people that we know professionally from the community, et cetera, to introduce to the hospital, to get them involved at the committee level, and then they become familiar with the organization, and then they surface as a board member someday.
How important is succession planning? Some would say that the most important, the 4 of you are really blessed by having strong and accomplished CEOs. But does the succession planning is not uniform? Only 21% of freestanding hospitals have CEO succession plans, according to a 2004 survey. That's well below the practice in publicly held companies. Succession plans more common with, somewhat more common with, actually, I take that back, not that more common for the largest systems. A survey, a report by Trustee magazine in last year found of the 14 largest systems in the country, only 5 have succession plans for CEO, board chairman, or senior management. Do your hospitals have succession plans? They're good or bad?
At NMH, again, there's a lot of similarities between this critical question and how you address it and what I see on my public boards as well. We have a governance committee. We're constantly looking at the issue you just addressed. The board has gotten more diverse during my time there. They continue to focus on that, getting the right people who do hit on all the attributes of diversity, including the thought diversity, which is important. Talent development is the other important dialogue that occurs there, and the development of people and seeing different folks take on new roles is all part of a dialogue that happens. So it's all good corporate practice and good governance. And it, again, the differences, I can't tell you that they're at all significant between what we spend in terms of what we do at my public board that just went through a succession planning exercise with the new CEO taking over, and the kinds of conversations that are occurring at NMH. They're very similar.
Tom, were you going to?
I mean, we do have succession planning that I think the board is comfortable with. I mean, the challenge is always whatever organization you're in, trying to anoint somebody ahead of their time and whether that person will be the right person when the time comes. But you certainly need to start with that, and we do a good job of introducing people, management does, to different roles within the organization so that there are various choices should that day come.
The Mary Kay mentioned in terms of diversity of expertise, not by intention, but the four of you, three of the four of you actually come to your board positions with backgrounds in healthcare of various kinds. I guess I would ask, you know, has that, what have you learned that you didn't expect joining a board, and how has it affected your day job? Tim, you want to?
Well, for me, it's been an enormous benefit because I do healthcare investing for Madison Dearborn Partners, and the access to where healthcare first starts within the hospital, and then obviously the post-acute setting, and the dialogue that we have on a continual basis, the access to the clinicians who are looking at and dealing with some of the investment opportunities that I'm examining. It's an enormous benefit of that way. I would say to you that the capabilities of NMH relative to the for-profit hospitals that I know, we're one of the founding investors of HMA, which is a for-profit hospital chain down in the southeast, about 55 hospitals. If there's anything learned, it's how similar both entities think in way of delivering good, high-quality care, process improvement, talent development, transparency, all the things that I've mentioned already. Before, when I was involved with HMA, you would think as a for-profit, we have access to the capital markets, things of that nature. We can, quote, do better in the community than the not-for-profits who are cash-starved, things of that nature. What I've found over the years is that the not-for-profits in all the communities do a pretty darn good job, and they're tough competitors to the for-profit folks that are out there. So for me, it's all a challenging competitive marketplace, whether it's for-profit, not-for-profit. There really aren't any differences. I think all of the companies, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit, are out there with the same mission at hand, and that is, how can I deliver better quality of care? How can I do it in a profitable way? And with the ever-changing landscape of what reimbursement is going to be going forward, how do I tackle that challenge and still continue to raise the bar, because everyone else out there is doing it, and I have to be able to compete against them.
Mary Kay, before I give you a chance to answer this question, I just want to tell the audience that we are going to go to questions from you at the bottom of the hour at 9:30. So Mary Kay, what have you learned that you didn't expect by joining the Edward board, and how has it changed your day job?
So I work at Baxter International, and Baxter is a provider of critical therapies, life-saving products for hospitals. And having been there for 25 years and being in the corporate, in a publicly traded company in the corporate environment, to go to a not-for-profit local hospital really has been enlightening. It has broadened my perspective. It helps me appreciate in my day job the challenges that we're facing. today in this changing environment. It helps me provide input and feedback to our management team as to how we can be more responsive to the needs of our customers. So it's really been a tremendous experience.
I'd just like to add, as a lay person on the board, I'm the one that he mentioned that don't have a healthcare background. It's been a personal journey for me. Certainly, having the experience in the corporate world has been a great foundation. There are actually more similarities than there are dissimilarities in terms of how to run an organization, particularly on the hospital board. But for me, the personal journey has been twofold. One, I went to a Catholic college, Xavier University. I'm not Catholic, a Jesuit Catholic. Even though I'm not Catholic, I am Christian. But
now you're Jesuit too.
I'm everything.
They never let you go away.
That's true. And so, having gone to a wonderful university and had a chance to sit on that board too at Xavier University in Cincinnati, the election board, and then being in, unfortunately, in 2008, a series of surgeries in a series of hospitals as a patient, I had a very interesting perspective when I sat down with the CEO, Mark Fry, for Alexian Brothers on my personal experience and how I wanted to contribute, and have family members that unfortunately or fortunately are on public aid or the public system. So there's so many things for me that's both personal and professional that makes this an interesting experience for me. How it's changed my personal life. I now chair our newly formed, our regenerated strategy committee, so obviously a little more time, but since I've retired from McDonald's, I have a little more time.
Many board members actually, hospital board members, actually their desire to volunteer comes from some personal health experience. I think that's not uncommon. Tom, has being a trustee changed your work, and what have you learned on the inside that you maybe thought that you didn't know as a lawyer to hospitals?
Well, you're certainly out of the ivory tower when you're sitting at a board meeting. I mean, to look at things from the legal perspective, to be dealing with a client's problems in a bit of a vacuum is, you know, one part of my day, and the other is being immersed on the side of the provider itself, where you are the hospital. So it's been a very fulfilling experience, continuing legal education every time I'm at a board meeting, dealing with compliance, quality, finance, the full scope of what all of our hospitals need to deal with. So I've been very fortunate. It does have its moments when you're reading your BlackBerry at a board meeting and hoping sister doesn't see you while you're, you know, trying to do something for your day job. But fortunately have a good set of partners and good people at the firm that value all of us giving our time back to not-for-profit, and it's very fortuitous that I'm able to do it at a hospital setting where you can kill two birds, if you will, because it really does make you a more rounded healthcare practitioner.